I got to tell you something. Didn't I come back from the combine a few years ago, and I'm like, Greg Olsen's got it. He's got the chops. He was on the field, talking to the tight ends, and he was giving us the scoop on the tight ends for the combine. Well, he's come a very long way. He's gone from telling us who the 10th best tight end at the combine is in real time to getting set to call the NFC Championship Game and Super Bowl 57 on Fox. And one of my favorites, doing a dynamite job with Kevin Burkhardt and the rest of the crew, is Greg Olsen back here on the Rich Eisen Show. How you doing, Greg?
I'm doing good. I was enjoying the cargo short conversation. I got to listen in on that. I feel like there's a lot to unpack there.
Yes. Lots to good use of unpack for the garment. See, look at you turning phrases. I like it, Greg. So let's just jump right into it. Are you in Philly yet? Are you there for the game?
No, I'll fly there later today. So
okay.
I'll get in.
All right.
Here in a few hours, and I know, like everybody else across the country, I don't think we could ask for a better game, and I know all of us are fired up to be there in Philly and in the link and call this game between, arguably the best two teams in the whole league, but for sure the best two teams in the NFC, that's for sure.
I know, and it's pretty cool that I think the league and the football gods got it right. I think these have been the best four teams in the NFL, certainly since the calendar turned to November, and here we are with both conference championship games representing the best. When you've talked to Brock Purdy, what have you gleaned? What can you tell me about how this kid is pulling off and doing what he's doing, Greg?
Yeah, I mean, every time we get off our call with him, we've had him now. We had his debut when they beat the Bucs. They were up 28-0 at half, and we're sitting there at halftime saying, who is this kid out here throwing 3 touchdowns? Like, what's going on here? All week we've been preparing for this to be the Christian McCaffrey show and protect the quarterback, and then there we were in his starting rookie debut, and he's up 28-0 at halftime against Brady and the Bucs. It was wild to see him there, and just now to see him all these months later, and just the growth that he's had just as a player. But from the first time we got off the call with him all the way up through last week's divisional round game, every time we get off, we say the same things to each other. We say, it's hard to believe he's a rookie. It's hard to believe he's now played 7 games in the NFL. Like, he has a really interesting demeanor. And what I mean by it is he's very confident. He's very calm. He seems like a guy who's kind of like, yeah, been there, done that, been through the fire, come out the other side. And here we are. We're like, you're getting ready to go play the Dallas Cowboys in a divisional round game, and the stakes just keep getting bigger and bigger, and you would never know it. And I think that's the biggest thing, that when you talk to Kyle Shanahan and the guys are on the team with McCaffrey and Kittle and Trent Williams, they all say the same thing. They're like, this kid, from the moment he got here, even though he was the last pick of the draft, we all know his story. They're like, he had a personality and an approach, even in training camp throughout the whole offseason, that just caused us to kind of look at ourselves and go, did we just kind of find a diamond in the rough? They're like, it was from day one. What caught everyone's attention was just his approach, his demeanor, his confidence, and now he's just growing as a passer and growing as a quarterback in this league. But it's evident the moment you talk to him.
So what did the Cowboys do that you think the Eagles can also affect to make Purdy look as green as we think he could, right? And I think we saw Purdy struggle without the turnovers. Dak was the one who did that. But what do you think the Eagles can affect that the Cowboys put on film to knock the Niners out and make Purdy maybe even turn it over? What do you got for me there, Greg?
Yeah, I think there's a lot of similarities. I think as we were preparing last week, as we were preparing for this San Francisco offense and what they were going to face with Dallas's defense, I think, we said it at the top of the broadcast. That was the best defense that the 49ers had faced since Purdy took over.
Mm-hmm.
That was by far the most talent. That was by far the best pass rush and speed. And I think the speed element is where Dallas and Philadelphia defensively are pretty similar. They don't just have 1 or 2 guys up front who can rush the passer and get after you. They got 4 or 5. They got guys at the second level and in the secondary who can support the run from depth, play with speed, play on fire. So, in that regard, I think there's a lot of similarities. Schematically and the way they build their fronts and coverages, the way Jonathan Gannon with the Eagles versus Dan Quinn with Dallas, obviously it's a little bit different. But I think that the thing that Purdy and this offense of San Francisco is going to face is there's going to be speed at all three levels. You think there's space there, all of a sudden that space gets eaten up really quickly. Whether it's Hassan Reddick coming off the edge or Gardner Johnson coming from like that safety nickel kind of hybrid spot that he's been playing now. So it's a talented group, and I would say the same thing we did last week. This is probably the best defense Brock Purdy has faced now again, and that's the way the playoffs work. Each week the stakes get a little higher. Each week the competition just takes up a little bit of a notch up, and it's a great challenge. But listen, they got Kyle Shanahan. He has unbelievable weapons around him. He has a very good offensive line. San Francisco doesn't take a back seat in talent or scheme to anybody. And I think that's what makes this matchup so interesting is regardless of who's got the ball, regardless of the situation, there are stars, there is talent, there is coaching on all aspects of this game, and that's the way it should be.
Greg Olsen getting set to call the NFC Championship Game Sunday, and then 2 Sundays after that, Super Bowl 57 on Fox right here on the Rich Eisen Show. When you chat with Nick Sirianni, you got a good story. He just is so colorful is a great way to describe it. What's he like when you're chatting with him? And you got a good one for me, Greg, when he's talked to you guys?
I don't know if I have like a specific story he's told. He's been really fun to talk to. I mean, these calls have probably been like as fun as any aspect of this job. I mean, I've gotten to have conversations with more coaches and coordinators and players than I had in 15 years of playing in the league. You're just exposed to so many different people. But, we always kind of get on him because when he does the call, he's like sitting, it's a Zoom call, so like we can see him, but he's like sitting on some like random couch in his office, and he's just like slouched back, super relaxed. And it's like he's sitting in your living room, like having a beer, just kind of shooting the, like it's just a very relaxed and calm environment. And I think that's the appeal of him. He's ultra confident. They have an unbelievable staff of guys who really understand what the mission is. I think that's what comes across the most is like when you talk to people around the Philadelphia organization, whether it's Sirianni on our calls and just his body language and how at ease and confident and comfortable he is. It's the same way when you talk to the players. I think there's just a really quiet confidence amongst the group. They're very sure of who they are. They're very sure of where their strengths are and what their strengths aren't. And I think that's the sign of a good team. I think that's the sign of a team that's kind of been battle tested. They dealt with that adversity at the end of the year with Jalen missing a couple weeks and kind of having some tough times there trying to find wins. But I can't say enough about the job that Sirianni has done. I mean, we had his coaching debut last year, week 1 down against the Falcons. And, we were preparing for the game. We didn't know a ton about him. We knew he had the wide receiver background and came from Indy, and Jalen Hurts was now the week 1 starter. How was that going to last? And now here they are. Fast forward, almost 2 full seasons, and they're in the NFC Championship. It's a pretty incredible and impressive coaching job that he's done, and you can't say enough good things about him.
Well, Greg, you had a front row seat to a dual threat quarterback winning MVP and taking an NFC championship victory to the Super Bowl in Cam Newton. Any similarities to him and Jalen Hurts that you've seen at all on film, chatting with them? You got something for me on that front? I'll take a stab there.
Yeah, I'll tell you, I see a lot of similarities, run game wise, starting with that, like run game scheme and style. There's a lot of similarities to what we were doing with Cam, here in Carolina, especially down in the red zone. You hear coaches talk about that a lot down in the red zone, accounting for the quarterback when the field becomes, wider than it is deep, right? Like that whole idea of how the field shape changes and how the schemes change and the coverages and how you try to attack zones in the red zone. It's hard to account for the quarterback. And, Cam made a living as a red zone runner, both designed and improv. And I see a lot of that in their scheme with Jalen. And it's a huge challenge, their ability to spread you out, guard every blade of grass, and be able to still throw the ball over your head with A.J. Brown and Devontae Smith. And I think that's what makes this style, the way they're operating as a run-first quarterback, run-heavy team, they still have that element of the elite passing game. Between those two wide receivers, Dallas Goedert, you overcommit to trying to take that run away. You overcommit to trying to account for the extra body in the box, to account for the quarterback pulling the ball with Jalen. And all of a sudden, that passing game, they're throwing it over your head. And A.J. Brown's one of the best in the league, along with Devontae Smith. So that's the cat and mouse game that I'm most looking forward to. I think that matchup between D'Amico Ryans and Shane Steichen and Sirianni, like, how willing are you to let them run a little bit so as not to let them have the big explosive plays in that run game? We didn't quite have that same passing philosophy or, personnel here in Carolina, but as far as the ability to make you account for the quarterback and what that does with the offensive line and the run blocking and the numbers, there's a lot of similar scheme and philosophy that I see with what they're doing that we did for a long time here in Carolina.
To me, any key that involves the guy who I think is going to win Defensive Player of the Year, it's not a very long limit you're going out on. But to me, Nick Bosa, if I'm D'Amico Ryans, I'm testing Lane Johnson's groin from jump with him, and I'm going to see what's happening. And because that way I'm affecting the run game on the way to the pass. That's what I'm looking at when I'm starting. What about you, Greg?
Yeah, I'm with you. I think, again, we haven't talked to D'Amico yet. I'd be interested to pick his brain here. We're going to talk to him tomorrow in our meeting. But, if I'm them and I'm just looking at this, back to like I was just saying about, dealing with those threats in the passing game that Philadelphia has, I think knowing I have Nick Bosa and I have Eric Armstead and I got Greenlaw and Fred Warner, 4 of your best players are in your front 7.
Right.
I think at some point, for as good as Philly's offensive line is, they're the best in the league. At some point, I think you have to say, all right, Bosa, we're not going to bring an extra safety down. We're not going to go crazy. You guys got to play. Like, you guys, he's arguably the best defensive player in the year. I agree with you. He's going to be the player of the year. Like, you guys got to go win, and you need to go chase down some of these design quarterback runs, and you guys need to win your matchups up front so I don't have to overcommit, and I can maybe keep some of those extra bodies in the back end playing our zones, getting an extra body in Jalen's face in the passing game. The second you have to overcommit to that, if they account for Bosa and they can block Greenlaw and Fred Warner, and all of a sudden now you're bringing an extra safety, that's where the problems come. So I'm with you. I think this game, Nick Bosa needs to be the star. I think Fred Warner needs to be a star. And those guys are amongst the best of anybody at their position in the entire league. D'Amico Ryans is going to need those guys in that front 7 to play to their complete abilities, and that will go a long way in trying to take away the 100 things that Philly can do against you on offense.
And it just shows you about how, this is a game in the trenches, and the quarterbacks are fascinating, and the pass catchers are fascinating. We didn't even talk about McCaffrey. I mean, obviously he could flip this script in a hurry, right? I mean, how effective do you think he's going to be here? What do you think about that before I let you go, Greg?
Yeah, I mean, I can't say enough good things. Obviously, I got a front row seat with McCaffrey when he first joined the league for, his first 3 years. We were teammates and obviously a close buddy. I mean, I've seen just what he's capable of, firsthand. And I think a lot's been made and just, rightfully so, about since Purdy's taken over. They're 7-0 and, they haven't lost. Well, since McCaffrey got here, outside of that first game, he got there in like Friday, and he ended up playing a little bit in the Sunday game. They lost to Kansas City. Starting that next week, in his first full week on the team, they're 12-0, right? So, like, they haven't lost since McCaffrey's been a full-time player. Now, there's a lot more nuance than just adding one player, but the point is he is in the best offense for his skill set. The creativity and the offensive mind and the players around him with Debo and George Kittle and Juszczyk, like all of them, you don't really put a position on. They're all kind of this like positionless player tag, and they have one of the best offensive minds at creating advantage and creating stress on the defense with Kyle Shanahan. So I think it's the perfect marriage. I think it's the perfect, the perfect combination of talent and scheme, and they got a lot of guys. And McCaffrey obviously is there at the top of that list. And I just, like I said before, no matter who has the ball, no matter what the situation of the game is, the storylines and the matchups in this game are as good as you could hope for. And I know I'm excited to get up there and talk about it and see how it unfolds. And I'm sure all you guys are the same.
Safe flight, Greg. Keep killing it, man. I love listening to you. You're awesome at this. You are awesome at it.
I appreciate you guys. Thanks. It's always good to be on, and
right back at
have
you.
a great weekend. Enjoy the game.
See you in a couple weeks. That's Greg Olsen of Fox calling the NFC Championship Game and the Super Bowl. Catch the Rich Eisen Show every single day on the Roku channel, 12 to 3 Eastern, for free.